hearts and hopes to die.
By these 50 countries, differing so much in race and religion, in language and culture.
It is a big idea, a new world order.
Well, I know they're lying. They tricked me once, but they're not going to trick me twice. The time is now. Welcome back to the Professor Penn podcast. David Penn, your host, glad to be with you as always for episode number 229, a special in-studio guest today. This is posting up on Thursday. Tanner, it's the 14th.
The 14th.
Good morning, Tanner.
Good morning.
We're all happy to be here. I wanted to introduce to the audience Representative Mike Wiener, who is in the Minnesota House. This is a gentleman who I've had one quick meal with and a couple of conversations. And when someone who's actually stepped up, decided to run and wins, and then wants to come on the Professor podcast, boy, the floor is all yours. We're so glad you're in. Thank you for coming in today, Mike.
Well, thanks for the invitation. I really appreciate being here. I guess my only real fear is, with the lighting in here, if I'm going to have a glare on my head, because
I got you. Don't worry.
You got it. Thank you.
Oh no, I think that's a badass look. Not everybody can pull that off.
I'm gonna have to smile less and keep up the the street cred, right?
So Mike was introduced. I have a supporter of mine who I've only met one time, but I think he's in your legislative district, isn't he, Robert Atkins?
He's in the Senate district to the north of me. I represent Senate district or House District 5B,
which is where in the state of Minnesota.
So my area is all of Todd County, the lower part of Wadena County, and then I've got a little bit of Cass and a little bit of Morrison, just a couple townships up in that area.
For the people that are listening in Oklahoma, is that central Minnesota, northern Minnesota? Where is this?
Well, I say it's basically the heart of the state. It's pretty much the center.
Okay.
I say it's close to heaven as you can get. It is a beautiful part of the state. We've got lakes, we've got rivers, we've got great farm ground, we've got timber. It's just a nice mix of everything.
It's north of St. Cloud?
It is.
About how far north of St. Cloud is it?
On the freeway, you're 50 minutes, just under an hour.
So you're about 2 hours, 2.5 hours from the cities.
That's right.
Okay, got it. Okay. So Mike represents the heartland of Minnesota, God's country.
God's country.
It is a mostly Republican area in the state. Is that true?
I would say that's a little bit of an underestimation. Our area is about 76 votes, about 76% Republican. So it is, I would say, hardcore Republican. There's only a few other areas in the state that vote with a higher percentage than we do.
Wow, 76% Republican.
I think Morrison County to the east of us votes a little bit higher than we do. And I think there was one other area that's really close. So we are basically the backbone, so to speak, of the Republican Party in the state of Minnesota as far as percentage.
So for the people that are listening out of state, the interesting thing for me, if you were in the national audience, because what we're trying to do here, Mike, on the podcast is to take people from passivity to activity, to change hearts and minds from we're watching podcasts for entertainment and information to, no, we're getting off the couch and we're getting in the game because our republic is at risk here. Our futures are at risk. Our faith is at risk. So, we're trying to create a political movement using this digital means. So, if you're listening and you're in Oregon, for example, this is a guy, I know a little bit about him because we talk. This is a guy who basically, and I don't want to misrepresent you, you can talk about it. You're a business guy, correct? You're a businessman.
I am. I own a small business up in our area. And actually, when I'm not there, my kids are now running the business. They're getting old enough to. They've been working with me for years. It's kind of very similar to how I grew up. My dad owned a construction company, primarily in the ag industry, grain bins, storage buildings, irrigation, things like that. And in that area, you grow up working for your parents, So I grew up with 6 brothers. There was
Wow.
7 boys and 3 girls. And I think every one of us, during the summers especially, were working for dad. So poured a lot of concrete, did a lot of work for him. And now my kids are filling the same role that I did growing up, which is really kind of neat. I mean, one of the reasons we started our business is so that in the future, our kids would be able to stay out in rural Minnesota. I think the quality of life there is exceptional. And I almost want to back up a little bit.
You go any
tell you a
direction
li-
you want to, young man.
So just to give you some background of who I am and where I come from, my folks, like I said before, 7 kids, traditional Catholic family. My mom was a nurse, worked at nursing home pretty much my whole life. Actually, yeah, as far as I can remember, she's always worked at a nursing home. My dad owned a small business, as I mentioned, and I would say we had a great upbringing. They instilled in us a lot of just traditional family values. A lot of hard work, perseverance, fortitude, temperance, all of these things. Traditional, classical virtues, I would say. I didn't listen to them all the time, but they did a very good job of teaching us.
Let me ask you a question, just on a sidebar.
Yeah.
Did you listen to rock and roll?
Um, yes, I did.
What was your favorite band when you were 18 years old?
Oh, when I was 18, I went through some stages.
I want to hear a stage.
Okay.
Because
So,
when you say temperance and perseverance, but you didn't always listen, I'm just trying to get a handle on how much you weren't listening by listening to the music that you were.
so
You,
I remember this very clearly when the hair bands were coming out,
okay.
right? And all of my older siblings were listening to, Poison and bands like that. I hated that.
Okay.
I hated it because that was like such mainstream music at the time.
Okay.
And I went, no, I don't like this. So when Nirvana and some of the grunge bands started coming out,
Okay.
I listened to that, which after a while I kind of went, this really isn't my thing.
Okay.
It was, kind of counterculture in a way. It was edgy, whatever. Um, but then I started listening to some stuff, some of the Black Sabbath, Iron Man, War Pigs, things like that. I kind of like that. I mean,
Okay.
it was anti-government, it was anti-establishment in a way.
It's edgy. Very edgy.
Rage Against the Machine was one of my favorite bands for quite a while.
Okay. That's cool.
And but after that, I moved to St. Cloud, and then I would say it got into, you know, Pantera and some of the more Megadeth, things like that. And it kind of had to deal more with the group that I was hanging out with. Um, but I still, if I feel um nostalgic in a way, I'll crank up Stone Temple Pilots or Nirvana or um Tool was one of my favorite bands for a while.
I got all these bands on my,
Playlist.
Spotify. Yeah, I got my greatest
Yep.
hits playlist. They're all on there. And part of it, there is we underestimate, I think, how important art is in the formation of our identities. And there is a certain theme there, a little bit of an anti establishment theme in some of that music you were listening to.
I did not realize it at the time, but I think that affected me, the type of music. Uh you're right. Music culture has such a huge effect on us. And then, like I said, when I moved to a different area, you're hanging out with different people. All of a sudden, that music kind of has a different effect on you as well.
I don't want to presume anything, but did you any chance go down to St. Cloud to go to school there?
Yes, I did.
Okay, cool.
So I moved away I graduated in 94, moved to St. Cloud, started working a job, um, got to know some people that I was working with. And it was a great town when you're 19, 20, 21, 22. But I met my wife in St. Cloud and we had our first daughter there. And she was about 18 months old, I think. And it just hit me. I said, this is no place to raise a family, to start a family. I said, we need to leave.
Man, St. Cloud did that to you?
St. Cloud did that to me.
Wow. For all of you that are listening from Philadelphia, PA, I got to tell you, this guy really wants to be out in the country because St. Cloud, I mean, for me, and I've lived in I've lived in the Twin Cities most of my
Mhm.
life, but I've lived in Philadelphia, for example. St. Cloud in the 90s uh, was pretty Pacific. I think it's changed, got a lot edgier over the last 30 years. Would you agree with that
I would
statement?
agree that the town has changed a lot. So I think when we moved out of there, it was probably the early 2000s, 01, 02, somewhere in there. And I wanted my kids to have the upbringing that I had. We could go out and play. You could run for days and not have to worry about anything. Your neighbors, you know who your neighbors were.
You're talking
And
about back home in the countryside.
that's right.
You knew your neighbor. Did you lock your doors?
I never did. Even when my folks, so when I went to college, and my folks were almost always home, but there was some times that they went business trip or whatever the deal was, maybe visiting family. If you came home, you knew the house was not going to be locked. You knew it. You could come home and spend the weekend there if mom and dad weren't there and the house was wide open. It's just the way it was. I wanted that sense of security. And we still have that out in greater Minnesota. We really do. I talk about it all the time, our quality of life. And that's why I think you're seeing more people are moving out to the rural areas in certain areas, right? It's not everywhere, but we're seeing people that are coming out to the small towns because they want good schools, they want a quality of life, they don't want to worry about crime and everything else that goes on. They want a good life, and it is there.
The
I
good life, that's an interesting concept. Now we're getting a little bit political, but what is the good life? I mean, this needs some because, there's a lot of different stories in the big city and people are going to have different opinions about what the good life is. And I'm not saying you're right or wrong in your opinion or because we got people that live downtown Minneapolis and they think they're living the good life. And I'm not here to judge it, but I'd like you to define it a little bit further because we talk about good education, don't have to worry about crime, you know your neighbors. But what else? What else is it about living in the country that is the good life?
well, those are all qualities that I think it makes it a good life. Crime is huge. If you're living in constant state of fear of being robbed, molested, whatever it is, you're in a state of anxiety all the time. Why would you want to maintain that lifestyle if that's where you were? I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me. Where you look at our crime rate out in greater Minnesota, it's minimal. You have to worry about maybe drunk drivers on the weekend or something like that. And we do see some drug issues, but for the most part, it's kind of segregated. You really don't see that unless you're looking for it. If you're working at a job in town, you don't see the drug issues. You don't see the people
And
that are
what
doing that.
towns would we recognize the names of in your area?
Um, Sauk Center is the closest, biggest town to me, and that's right on the freeway. So most people know where Sauk Center is, but that's actually out of my area by a few miles. Long Prairie is the county seat
Okay.
for Todd County. That's the biggest town. And going north, we have what we call the old railroad towns. So they're every 7, 8 miles apart is another little town.
Okay.
And Browerville, Clarissa, Eagle Bend, Bertha, Hewitt are all the small towns
These
in
are
my area.
little towns.
Yep,
Little townships,
these are
actually.
little towns.
Yeah.
Yep. And then further north, we've got Wadena is in my area.
Okay.
So that's right on 10. A lot of people know that name. Staples and Motley are
Okay.
on 10 as well. Those are the bigger towns in my area. But there is no town over 10,000.
This is really rural America, and we're talking about the good life. So it's safety and security is there. Uh, there is good education. Schools are there. You would say that the educational system is closer to the people in your district than it is here in the cities, correct?
I think when you see those school boards, we had one just recently where the school boards changed in one of the towns. They changed 4 people,
Okay.
which was a big shift. But what they saw was there was issues that were going on in the school and people really weren't paying attention till something happened that brought this to light. And all of a sudden people said, we need to get involved, which was great to me. They changed the school board over, they put different members in there. And I hear from our local superintendents all the time that we actually want more local autonomy from the state. We want to be able to control our destiny more than what the state allows us to do. And I think this is great. Part of the reason for that is because, like I said, every one of those small towns, not everyone has a school, but most of them do. And everyone is different. If you take the demographics in Long Prairie, which has food processing, it's 50% Latino heritage versus the next town up the road, and that's entirely different. So when the school programs, when the school mandates come from the state, it's hard to make it work in one town, which is entirely different than the next town. And our superintendents are saying, we want more local control. Our school boards are saying, we want more local control. Go back and look at that history. We used to have these little red schoolhouses. It's kind of a little house on the prairie sort of mentality, right? Where you had 30 kids in a school building. And then that changed in the 1940s, 50s, depending upon the school district and so forth. And they combined them into the public schools. At that time, if there were Amish around those communities, they attended those little red schoolhouses. We have people up in our area, Amish, that attended those little red schoolhouses. But they said when it went to a public school like this, they pulled out. They did not want that because and I say this all the time, government closest to the people is the best. When that school district, that little red schoolhouse, when your principal or your superintendent was your neighbor and you knew them because you probably farmed right next to them, you probably had family that was married, into that family. If there was issues, you're going to take care of it. That's just the way it works. Government closest to the people is best. Whether it's the school board, whether it's county commissioners, the further you get away from the people, the worse it becomes. And when we talk about quality of life, when we have
The good life.
the good life, one of the things that I would really put a high value on is that sense of community. People take care of each other. People look out for each other. It still happens.
You know your neighbors.
Even if they're not your neighbors, even if it's somebody you don't know. I'll give an example. You see somebody pulled over on the side of the road. The hood is up. Do you keep driving?
Are you asking me personally?
Sure.
In the Twin Cities? Depends who is I have stopped, infrequently I will pull over and help. It's not something that I do as a matter of course.
It doesn't happen very often in the metro. Out in greater Minnesota, and I can speak for our area especially, you have an issue, people will stop. They don't have to know you.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. How about where you grew up in Alex? Oops.
Yeah. No, that's that area. It's not too far from Long Prairie, so
How far is it from Alex to Long Prairie?
I'd say about 30-minute drive.
So you're actually a homeboy.
Yeah.
Kind of.
I know the Amish people he's talking about. I know right that area where they're living.
Is there a big Amish community there?
There is. There wasn't when I graduated there was no Amish there. That was in 94. And they moved in since.
What brought them in?
I think most of it was low land prices at that time.
Okay. And what are they farming or are they manufacturing or
They have
doing all kinds of different things?
A lot of different things.
Okay. Very industrious people.
Yes, they are. A lot of farms. There is quite a number of sawmills around us. Construction company. There's a few of those. A couple guys are doing upholstery. Trying to think of what else. And then there's always the percentage of the Amish that leave. The ex-Ams, they call them, ex-Amish.
Okay.
And they are very industrious too, and they start businesses and
So would
big
you
families.
say your area, in addition to the good life being people care one for another? In other words, what you're really operationalizing is you're treating your neighbor as you wish to be treated. When you stop at the side of the road, it's part of that good life. There's some traditional values that permeate the area. Is that a reasonable
I would
statement?
say that golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Treat them the way you would want to be
And
treated.
there's hunting and fishing in the area.
Oh, we've got great hunting and fishing.
Okay, yes, that I know. He's a
Yeah, we were already chatting a little bit when you were in the bathroom.
how
Mhm.
about hunting up there?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So you've got some traditional, because people in the cities are not, I mean, we have people that are good with firearms, but it's not frequent anymore. And we don't have a lot of hunters here in the Twin Cities anymore. I mean, we have some come to your area, but I mean, really, this is a completely different culture. And
It
this is what we now, and just to take a sidebar just for a second. So when you roll in to the Minnesota legislature and you got a lot of people that come from the Twin Cities, and you got a lot of people on the other side of the aisle that are not really part of this kind of culture. They really do they understand you?
No, I don't think they do.
Because I do understand you. I mean, a lot of these things we're talking about are things that are important to me. But I mean, this is part of the political issue. And I'm going to just say something as an opening bit as we move into a little bit more political part of the conversation. I feel awful for the people in your district. And I'm going to tell you why. You're ruled by the people in the cities. And those people don't give a tinker's damn about your lifestyle. In fact, I would say, and I'm not saying it's every one of them, but I'm saying generally speaking, the movement is to eliminate this kind of lifestyle. Is that right, wrong? I mean, do you agree with what I mean? Fight me if you think I'm wrong.
No, I think there's always been kind of a negative view about the people that live out in rural areas. Once the cities grew up bigger, eh, wasn't it in the 1970s we went from more population out in rural Minnesota, rural areas across the country to more people in cities. I think it was in the 1970s somewhere. And I think that really changed our society because when you have a connection to farming, agriculture, the
To the
soil,
land.
that's right. You view things a little bit different. You absolutely do. You understand where your food comes from. You understand the necessity of planning ahead a little bit. How many people out in our area still preserve food? They can. They grow big gardens. They freeze for the next year. How much of that happens in the metro? Where you go to the grocery store and you just buy what you need for the next day. But those lessons, those important lessons about thinking ahead, planning ahead, are a necessity out there. You don't wait. If you burn wood, you don't wait until November to start putting your wood pile together. You just don't do it. You work on next year's wood pile. You're always thinking a year ahead. Look at our farmers. As soon as you get done with harvest, it's not that you have the whole winter off. They're prepping pretty much all winter long in order to put stuff back in the ground in the spring.
I think
So
this is a valuable moment in the podcast because we're talking about the organization of how people see the world, how they see themselves. Are they connected to the land? Are they This is part of the good life, right? Being connected to the natural way. That, if I could say one thing, personally, as a personal observation, and I've spent so much time uh, in the woods myself and spent so much time doing like real physical things in my life. And I look at a lot of the people that grew up here with me, and they're so broken away from any sense of nature. And that, if there's something I could say about the good life, I mean, people that are living outstate, they're living the natural way much more than the people here in the cities. And that to me is the good life, is the natural way. There's a whole school of American philosophy that said, if you want to find God, it's in nature where you're going to meet him. Is that what we're talking about a little bit?
I think there's a lot to that. It is, how do you put it into words with somebody that's never experienced it? But now think about it you talk about the people in the cities who are disconnected. On a typical weekend, let's not say a typical weekend. Let's look at fishing opener. in the state of Minnesota.
Okay.
What does the road look like 2 days before the fishing opener? What does I-94 look like? What does 35? What does 10 look like?
How about coming home on
It's
Sunday?
exactly. It's
Mm.
bumper to bumper people trying to get out of the cities. Okay? Why are they doing that? They're trying to enjoy something that they can't experience in the metro. They're trying to get out to what they want. Maybe they can't afford. Maybe they're told that they can't afford it. Maybe, you know, the opportunities are down here, but that life is what they're chasing.
That's an
How many
that's an
people
interesting political comment. Really that for the Republican Party of Minnesota, because all those people on that road are not voting R. But they're all seeking a connection with a lifestyle which is traditional.
So even if it's not fishing opener, Brainerd, Big Lakes area, and that town would probably be half of what it is without the lakes. And most of those people are not local. They're coming up from the cities on the weekend.
That's
They
the
will.
same thing with Alexandria.
Alexandria is
Yeah.
the same way. They've got the chain of lakes up there. What's there, 13?
Yeah, I think there's about 13.
Right. People come out of the metro to experience that quality of life. It should indicate to everyone how much better that system is. It's a simpler way of life. It's a connection to the soil. You have to pay a little bit of attention. How many people watch the weather when they're down in the metro, but as soon as you come up to the cabin for the weekend, you're looking to see what the weather's going to do. But if you live out there, you're paying attention to it on a daily basis. Go to the local coffee shop and somebody's going to say, it's supposed to rain tomorrow. That's the way it is because we're looking ahead. We're connected to that nature, to the earth. It is different. But I think that's part of the political process here and my political mindset. So let's get into the political part of it because I think this ties together. I've always been sort of political. I have voted since I was 18 years old. I always felt it was a duty, a responsibility, and I always wanted to make sure that my vote was there.
Can I frame this out just a little bit to
Yeah.
help this? Because I got all these people that are going to listen to this, and my goal is to get every one of them off the couch and into the game because I want everyday, regular citizens to recognize that until we get involved, we're going to have the most scummy rats running the deal because there's no oversight over them, and we need people that know nature, that have a traditional feeling to say, you know what, we can't leave this up to other people. We got to do it ourselves. And you're that guy, aren't you?
And I think this is where this all ties together. So I had bought 40 acres from my folks when we moved back up there and we were going to build our house. Moved in with mom and dad. When you've got a young family, that's kind of a struggle in and of
Your
itself.
dad was farming and he broke you off a piece of 40 acres. Is that what happened?
Well, we had a 40 acres that was separated about a half mile from the farm.
Okay.
And they had sold off a bunch of the land. So he didn't really farm, at this point. Actually, when his business expanded, we really didn't farm anymore.
Did you grow up farming though when you were a little kid? Was he farming when you were young?
Dad ran the business and us boys did most of the farming.
Okay.
Because I was in the middle. I had older brothers that could do the majority of it.
What were you farming? What were you doing there?
We had hogs at one time. We had mostly small grains,
Okay.
some corn. But that was also the bad years for agriculture. In the early 80s when the interest rates were extremely high, farming didn't do very well in those years. But so Dad had his business there. Oh, shoot, where was I going? Oh, when I bought the 40 acres. And we were going to split 5 acres off of that because my brother wanted to build right next to me. And we went into the county offices and they said, well, you can do this, but you've got to put 5 rows of trees right here. And I said, well, this makes no sense because I'm still going to use this as agriculture. This is farm ground. Well, they said, well, this is what we want you to do. And I got kind of upset because I said, this is our ground. You're basically telling me I can't farm this and I've got to put trees between me and my neighbor, which is my brother, which makes no sense to me. So the county
What was the
commissioner,
what I just because I'm what was their rationale?
the rationale was that at some point in time, somebody else might buy it, and therefore you have a visual or a kind of a fence between you two.
Okay.
Out in our area, you know, I can see half dozen of my neighbors if I up on the hill. So it's not like the trees are going to make that much of a difference. But I didn't really like being told what to do with my land. The one of the county commissioners said, we need somebody on the planning and zoning board. If you don't like the way this is being done, you get on the board and you can change it. So I was on the planning and zoning board for right about 15 years.
Wow.
How easy was that or was it hard? What was the process like for you to get on that board?
That was an appointed position at that time.
Okay.
So the county commissioner could vote me off at any time or just tell me that I, wasn't doing a good job, and just ask me to step down. But I enjoyed doing it, and there was a lot to learn with that. But one of the things before I got appointed to that is my dad said, you can't complain too much if you don't get involved. Because I was hemming and hawing if I wanted to get on this board. He said, you can't complain too much if you don't get involved. Dang it. There's those words of wisdom from your parents that either you better listen to or it's going to
Shut up or put up.
bite you later. So I decided to get involved, and I was on that board for quite some time. Well, as far as my political experience, before the 2020 presidential election, I had not been involved with the BPOUs. I had not been involved with the Republican Party. Like I said, I voted all the time, but I was watching what was going on, and I said, I can't complain if I don't get involved. I don't like this system. It's not that I don't like it. I don't understand it. How are we endorsing candidates to run for office? It seems to me that it's done in these backroom deals, smoke-filled rooms. I didn't understand the process. So I started going to the BPOU meetings
As an observer.
as an observer. And
As a citizen observer. Which,
correct.
I mean, if you're in Minnesota or wherever you are in this country, I'm going to say this again. This is about getting politically organized. You don't have to be appointed or elected. You just need to show up. That's your first step. Listen to what Mike did. He woke up one day and he said, man, what's going on here? I'm going to go check it out.
Mhm.
And, you have a local board right in your back. If you're in Minnesota, they're right in your backyard. Every place in this country, there's some local committee representing your party. You could be a Democrat listening. They got a Democrat board too.
Mhm.
In every political area, in our state, we do it either by Senate district or by county. There's a board there, and what Mike did is he just found out when the next meeting was, and showed up.
I started showing up.
How'd they feel about that?
Within about half dozen meetings,
Yes, yes.
I was ready to quit. I didn't want to go back.
Because
It was most of the meetings were 6 to 10 people. There was really nothing that was getting involved, activating, trying to pull more people in. There was another gentleman that had quit about the same time I started going to the meetings.
okay,
And I called him up and I said, why did you quit? He gave me his reasons. And we talked about it for a little bit. And I said, this is the problem. If guys like you and I walk away, nothing changes.
oh, that's just a beautiful. There, hey, put that timestamp
You
that
don't have
one.
to tell me, David. I'm the producer. I'm writing it down already.
That's a great one. No, because that summarizes, and that was my experience when I joined my BPOU, is that we had a lot of get-togethers, social events, but when it came down to the real work of organizing, of converting people, because it is kind of a conversion, why listen to people and talking to them and going on and having meetings with people you didn't know, that wasn't really going on. That's how we ended up here at Free People Radio. It's like, man, we got to reach people and get them motivated. And I don't mind talking to leftists. I'll talk to anybody
Mhm.
because I know who I am. I know what I believe. But it continues. So you talk to this person who quit, and you guys kind of came to an agreement that, wow, there's not a lot going on here, is there? Did I understand that correctly?
That's accurate.
And this is the Minnesota GOP local committee in your area.
Correct.
Okay, got it.
So we continued to go. And I butted heads with the BPOU chair a little bit. And I tell you this because eventually he realized that I wasn't doing this to cause problems. I was doing this because I wanted something more. So I ended up going to the meetings, got elected as deputy chair, and we moved the location of where the meeting was held. It was held to the north, which was geographically located better in the county, but the population is all in the southern part of the county. So we moved it to a supper club in Long Prairie, started inviting in sheriff candidates, county commissioners, school boards, anybody that was going to run for office had better come and talk to the Republicans in that area. And if they didn't want to, we kind of didn't give them a stamp of approval. Anyways, our meetings went from 5 to 10 people to 30, 40, sometimes 50 people in a meeting.
You opened it up to the community.
It brought people in when there was a reason to be there. And now the chair, him and I are still good friends. Like I said, we butted heads a little bit.
You took it to a positive.
We took it to a positive, exactly. When redistricting happened, we kind of had an idea of who was going to be running for office. My area, Todd County, was split between John Poston and Ron Cretia. And I kind of felt that we were going to...
This is the House.
This was the House.
These are two state legislators in your district, which
Correct.
is district number...
5B.
5B. Okay, great.
Yeah, and I
so it's Senate District 5.
Correct.
Okay, got it.
And our senator was Gazelka.
Are you kidding me?
No.
Oh, boy. We'll come back to him when the time comes. Boy, oh, boy.
But
seems to me he's got he's got a protege that's now your senator up there, if I remember correctly. Republican. Is it Utke?
Utke, yeah.
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 Yeah. We'll get back to that. We got plenty of time.
So we kind of felt with redistricting that there was going to be candidates who were going to be running. I had no intention of running. None. When the lines were drawn and we saw the maps, and I went, oh, we don't have a sitting representative in this area. Both Ron Cretia and Poston were district out of this new area.
Okay.
So I looked at my wife and I said, I think I'm going to run for office. And she said, are you serious? I said, as a heart attack. She said, what do you think your chances of winning are? I said, not a hope in heck. She goes, why do it? I said, I just want to learn the system. I want to learn how this works. And
that's cool. You were becoming an activist.
Well, once again, I can't complain too much if I don't get involved. And if I don't understand the system and somebody says, well, this is how it's done, I can't refute them because I don't know the system. As the story goes, I started requesting the delegate list. And lo and behold, I couldn't get the delegate list.
I've had that same experience.
It's interesting.
Very interesting.
I did get the delegate list for Todd County. That one came to me relatively quick. My chair gave that to me, and he was great about it. But I could not get the rest of the delegate lists.
Until what, like a week before the convention?
I think it was 2 weeks before when I finally got them.
That wasn't that great of them.
No, it was a learning experience. I'll put it that way.
You were already labeled as a troublemaker.
Yeah, pretty sure.
You were? Oh, for sure you were.
So we go to the endorsing convention. And once again, and I will admit my lack of experience, knowledge, whatever, there was 3 of us that were running.
Now, you knew the other 2 because you're all locals, so you knew the other 2 also?
We're local. The one was a gal, and I knew who she was, but I didn't really know her. And I reached out to her and I said, look, this doesn't have to be adversarial. We are all trying to do what's best for the Republicans in our area. We all maybe have a different point of view on what we should be doing, but we don't have to be enemies here. And Pam and I are friends to this day.
Okay, that's beautiful.
Great gal. The other individual was a BPOU chair up in Wadena. Reached out to him. Less of a welcoming response. And I basically said the same thing to him. We don't have to be enemies here.
Is he still in the party?
He's not part of the BPOU up there. He has been at events and so forth.
Okay. All right. We don't need his name. I'm just saying, yeah, you were trying to create a dialogue amongst the candidates, which would be uplifting. It worked in one case, not so well in another. Do I get it correctly? Okay,
Correct.
cool. Okay.
Because aren't we all Republicans? Don't we all have R behind our name? And maybe this was being naive on my part, but isn't our real...
No, stop.
Isn't,
yes, you were being naive.
Isn't
yes,
our
you
real...
were.
Okay, I admit it.
You're busted now. Come on.
Our real opponent here is the Democrats, is my thought. Why are we fighting amongst ourselves? It didn't make sense to me. So I go to the endorsing convention. Never been to one before. Go there. There's 3 of us, like I said. First round of ballots takes place. I think I had 45%. I think Pam had 3%. And the other individual had 52.
Okay.
So I looked at that and I went, I can't win this. Even if all of Pam's comes to me, he's still going to have, a higher percentage, and he's probably going to win this. So mentally, I'm thinking, what am I going to say? I want to be gracious. I want to help out whoever wins this, because the bigger picture here is we win the state. That's my thought process. I had a speech prepared for the first round. I had nothing.
You were winging it on round 2.
On the second one.
Live life, baby.
Oh, yeah. I went up there and I gave a speech. And they were doing the counts, and I had a great crowd of people there. They were praying. They had their heads down. They were praying the whole time. And mentally, I'm just thinking, I've got to be a gracious loser. I've got to shake his hand, preparing a mental speech of what I'm going to say. Anyways, one of the tellers comes back and he says, "We've got the counts, Mike." We're walking back and he goes, "Congratulations." And I don't know what he's talking about because I'm thinking that I lost, We get back there and they said, "Mike, you got 60 point whatever percent." So I went from 45, first round of ballots. Second round of ballots, I went to 60.
Wow.
That's a pretty big swing.
That's based on you standing up in front of that crowd and moving hearts and minds.
It was shocking to me. And there's a feeling of, adrenaline that goes with that. I can see how politicians, this can become addictive. We went after the event, we went out for supper, and I remember thinking to myself, be careful, because those emotions and stuff can lead you to do things that you probably shouldn't be doing. That thrill of victory can...
The focus on winning instead of the focus on telling the truth.
Exactly.
Is what I'm trying to work on in the podcast and try to get out to all the people in the party, because I have people in the party come right up to me and say, the only thing that matters is winning. And when I hear that, I think to myself, man, where did you go to school? Because to me, I was brought up that the only thing that matters is searching for the truth.
We should be doing the right thing. At the end of that event, an individual came up to me and he said, "Mike," he goes, "that second speech," he goes, that was good. But he said, "Do you think this is over?" And I said,
What do you mean?
What do you mean? Exactly. He said, he's going to primary. He said, "I've known this guy for 20 some years. He's been my friend." But he said, that second speech changed my viewpoints. And he said, "I want you to be our rep," which was great. And
Did he primary you?
Of course he primaried me.
This is the thing now. Okay, so I'm going to just take a sidebar here for all the people in the party. Were you at the 2024 state convention when Royce White got the endorsement?
I was not.
Okay, I was there, and I was a delegate, and Royce won on the first ballot overwhelmingly. I mean, he got first ballot victory.
Mm-hmm.
And, I had been at my SD 45 convention in 23, a year before. And, Alex Plekish is in my district, 45. And Alex holds a lot of sway there. He's been in this area for a long time. And they brought in Kendall Qualls. And I felt like it was personal for me. No, it wasn't. That's me making meaning. But, I've been a live wire since the day I walked in the party. And Kendall gave a beautiful, rousing speech at the convention about we can beat the Democrat and we need unity, unity, unity. And we have to support the party process. We have to support the endorsed candidate. And then a week after Royce got that ballot victory, first ballot victory, that first round victory, here comes Kendall endorsing Joe Frazier. And I thought to myself, you people, because you can't say you people. Sorry, Kendall, I didn't mean it like that. I mean, you Republicans that are the party elders, so to speak, the insiders of the party that are trying to get people like me to bow to the party process. When you guys lose, you're the first people to break the party solidarity. And that's exactly what happened to you. Am I right or am I wrong?
So that's exactly what happened.
Man, that's, and then they're going to say, and then I'm watching the thing right now. Oh, there's a thing going on in Carver. They're going to have a baseball game in September. The Rhinos versus the Firebrands, or what, they got some name, because they want to bring everybody together.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this thing's getting tired, is what I'm saying. I mean, if we're all going to be together, we all have to live with the outcome. It's not the outcome for me, but not for thee. That thing's got us. So you experience this, what Royce experienced here at a statewide level. You had a mini dose of it right in Senate District 5 and 5B.
It was enlightening. It was an education that you can't pay for.
And let me ask a question, just because I want to know. And if you don't want to answer, you can just look at me and smile. Was your primary opponent a close friend of State Senator Paul Gazelka?
I don't know that for sure. I don't.
Okay.
When he went to primary, I had basically no tools in the tool chest. We didn't have the fundraising to help us.
You didn't know what you were doing.
We didn't even know what we were doing.
That's great.
So we didn't have signs. We didn't have the support of the party. They didn't bring door knockers up. HRCC.
Why didn't you have the support of the party? You won the endorsement at the convention. What happened?
I don't know.
Oh, well, okay.
Was I in the room where decisions were made?
You know what? That is a very mature way of talking on to anybody. I mean, forget about being on mic. You don't know. You weren't there.
I wasn't there.
So any story you're going to make up is either hearsay or you're creating meaning for yourself. That is I respect that tremendously. I really do.
I can give you my point of view of my experience. So we go through the primary process, right? And there again, learning things. And I reached out to some representatives and senators and other people because I like to study. I like to learn, right? We have an endorsement process for a reason. And it's actually very effective. At one time, I used to say that primaries were the way to go. And then I started looking into this. And this was before I even ran for office. This was years ago. In the state of Minnesota, when we have the Democrats who can outspend us 10-1, every dollar we spend fighting amongst ourselves in primaries, we're not spending against the Democrats. You are basically taking your limited resources and fighting amongst ourselves. So either we support our endorsed candidates or we're going to keep losing to the Democrats. That's the way I view this. So going through the process, my primary, once again, all the signs are going up. We had very limited resources. But, with a name like Wiener, we have to use what we have available, right? So I was talking to one of my uncles and he said, if I was ever going to run for public office, he said, I was going to use this slogan. If you're sick of the Bologna, vote for Wiener.
That's good.
Which,
who said that?
One of my uncles.
That's a clever guy.
So we used what resources we had available. Because I own a small business, we took some of our semi-trailers and we painted on the side of them.
You wrapped them.
If you're sick of the Bologna, vote Wiener. And we parked him at a few places. And it got a lot of attention. So primary night, remember before at the endorsement, I said I didn't think I was going to win. Primary night comes in, and the numbers are coming down from the northern part of the district first, which is where my opponent lived, the whole evening. The whole evening, the numbers are coming in from the north. And he has a considerable lead the whole time. It gets, we have family over at mom's place. We have a few friends over, neighbors, and it's getting a little bit late. And I said, I can't win this. He's ahead by a couple hundred at that time.
Insurmountable.
And I said, there's no way that this is going to work.
Is this on television or cable or radio? How are you getting these results? How are you watching this?
Secretary of State website.
Okay, so everybody's crowded around a laptop computer and you're watching the votes come in.
Well, after I'm watching those numbers, and like I said, they're coming in from the north, which was primarily his area. That's where he was a county commissioner. We're watching them coming in, and then we're getting a little bit more as they come to the south, and I'm picking up a little bit here, a little bit there. But there was only like 3 districts left. And I was down by a couple hundred, if I remember correctly. And I said, well, I'm going to have to give him a call tomorrow. Tell him, congratulations, whatever I can do to help him win, be that gracious loser that I talked about at the endorsement. And a couple neighbors left. And it was about 10, 15 minutes later, one of my nieces yelled out. She's like, Uncle Mike, you won. And I went, I thought she was messing with me. I thought she was joking around. And here the last couple precincts came in, and I won the primary by 20 votes.
Wow.
So I never expected really to be a representative. My whole time campaigning.
That was the election because it's a 76R district.
Exactly.
So whoever won that primary was going to St. Paul.
That's right.
Well, congratulations. This is your first.
This is my second term.
Oh, you got reelected.
I got reelected.
Okay, great.
Yes. So and I want to share that because the experience, like I said, you can't pay for this education. You have to experience some of the machinations of the party firsthand to understand what's going on. But now you're also a political outsider when you come into this environment.
Talking about us being elected and going to St. Paul.
Right. So who was the comedian that said politics is a big club and you ain't in it?
I don't remember, but I've heard it.
It's a great line. But that's kind of the environment you walk into when you weren't supposed to be there, when a significant amount of money is spent against you, when my primary opponent, I had said, you're risking everything. You're a county commissioner, you're this, or you're that. If you lose this, you lose everything. And he said, well, I have powerful politicians that are backing me. And now, like I said, you learn this process and how this goes. So to me, it was one of the best experiences I could have ever had. And this is where I come back to when we talked about quality of life in the land and stuff like that. I think I had to go through that political process. I had to see what that was like. I had to have the feeling of being the outsider to get to the point where I said, you know what? We can change this. We can change this environment. We can change how we do this stuff in politics in the state of Minnesota, not just on our own Republican side, but across the state. We can do better. People want better out of our politicians. And I think that's where you go through a learning curve, you experience these things, and then you come back and say, you know what, this is the way I've always felt, and this is what's right, what we want out of politics. Why do you think Trump got elected? People want something different. In the state of Minnesota, we're sick of crooked politicians. We're sick of a system that doesn't work for the people. We're tired of, instead of the state working for the people are working for the state. And that's what I'm promoting. That's what I'm pushing. And that's why I wanted to get on your show and other shows to say, we can do better. We can do better in the state of Minnesota. We can do better as Republicans when it comes to our endorsements, when it comes to our party, and we can do better as politicians in this state. Because I'm frustrated with it. But you can't complain too much if you don't get involved. And I've got to get that message out there. So that's why I'm here. And that's what I wanted to talk about.
That's a long preamble. We've had a long preamble.
Yes,
So
we
now that
have.
we've set it up, we've queued it up. Let me just say back what I think I'm hearing. What I think I'm hearing is you're an everyday person that lived close to the land, grew up in traditional culture, outstate in God's country.
Mm-hmm.
Your family, you didn't say it, but I think there was some religion in your family,
Absolutely.
faith. You were laboring along, running your business and raising your kids. Your kids are working in the business, which I'm an entrepreneur, so I understand the joy of having family members work and the challenge.
And the challenge.
And the challenge, not just the joy, but you're building a business, and we've talked off mic about it. I think it's a successful, brilliant business. And you woke up one day and something happened, and you said, "Man, I got to get involved." Your uncle said, "Hey, don't complain if you're not going to play." So you became a county commissioner or a zoning commissioner. And then you went downstream a few years, and all of a sudden you said, "You know what? I got to see what's going on in the party." And you started hanging around with these people, and you said, "Wait a second. Wait, this isn't the way I would do it." And you said, "Man, I can't complain unless I'm actually going to do it." So you went and did it. And then for whatever reason, because we don't know what the plan is, you found yourself in St. Paul representing a 76% R political district,
Mhm.
which means you got legs for a long time. Theoretically, if you want to keep playing, you got a political career here in Minnesota. I mean, you probably don't think about it that way, but that's what I'm hearing.
I know people have said that. You could stay in that position for a long time. But as a business owner, do you settle with the status quo? Or do you constantly want to improve?
Well, obviously, if you're coming on the Professor Penn podcast, you're willing to break some dishes because you know who I am. I know everybody knows what I'm doing. And as I said to you before I come on, and I'm going to say this to all the elected representatives that are going to hear this, and I hope everybody in the caucus, I hope they all listen to this. Anybody's welcome to come in here. I'm not going to treat anybody differently than I would treat you. I've got my political persona when I'm doing my own podcast, but when we're doing this is straight news interview. What's going on? How can we make the state better? How can we serve the citizens of the state in a way that makes a better life for them? How can we take what you would call the good life and make it available for more and more people all the time?
Mm-hmm.
And to me, the good life is longevity and compressed morbidity, and everybody has economic freedom. I mean, to me, it's very simple what makes for a good life, and you've already said it. Don't tell me to plant trees on my land. What are you doing?
Well, that freedom, that goes a long ways. And I think that connects with just about everybody. We talk about the split. We mentioned it before about the urban rural divide. Human nature doesn't stop within that 494, 694 beltway.
Yep.
It doesn't. It's simply, it may have little nuances, it may have some changes, but people want the same thing. They really do. Do they have access to it in the same levels? No, probably not. Are they aware of some of these things? Probably not. But that's our job to actually educate. I think as legislators, we have to use that voice, that pulpit, that soapbox to educate people, to say, hang on here a second. This idea that's being promoted by whomever, because there's bad ideas on both sides, this has the cause and effect of this or this or this. And it's our job to promote those good ideas and stop the bad ideas. So my first term, we come into the trifecta. Democrats control the House, Senate, governorship. And that was tough. That was really tough because they basically anything that was presented, promoted by our side was shot down. I think there was only, if I recall correctly, 10% of all the legislation that passed in those two years were Republican bills. 10%. We voted. I mean, that's Minnesota is a very close state. It is a purple state. I would not say it's a blue state by any means. It is very close. When you look at the numbers now, when you've got a tie in the House, Senate by one seat, and then you've got a Democrat governor, this is very close to changing. So when they governed like they controlled 75% of the district or 75% of the state, they basically insulted the rest of the state. They basically said that your viewpoints, your way of life does not matter to us. It was an insult. But like I said before, there's an education that you have to experience firsthand. That trifecta was a good thing for a lot of us as legislators because we realized what it is to be a bad legislator as well.
Say a little
That's
bit more about
huge.
that. What do you mean by that? I'm curious what you mean by that.
A good example. There was a bill. It was economic development bill, and a Democrat was talking about how this would affect his area. And I have a very different viewpoint on that piece of legislation. We talked, and he brought up a few things, and I went, oh, because his area is different, because his district has different amenities, different social structure. I wouldn't say social structure, but economic structure. That bill made sense in his area. I was against it based on how my area would be negatively affected by something like that. But it does work for theirs. As the House members, we're supposed to look at all of the state, right? Our vote doesn't just affect our people. It affects the people in that area as well. So when I saw basically a selfishness on the other side without listening, it kind of opened my eyes in a way. And I also saw a bigger picture. And this is something that goes back to the history. I think we mentioned Ronald Reagan earlier before the show started, I think. His fight against communism and socialism has never really gone away. It is still there. And in this state, it is so obvious what's going on, especially now when we have a city council candidate,
Democratic Socialists.
Democrat socialist. I had always thought, based on my experience with Democrats out in my area, we have the DFL, right? Democrat Farmer Labor. And I still have neighbors that are DFL. Daddy was a DFL, Grandpa's a DFL, we're DFL. That's the way they vote.
Legacy.
That party is not the same as what it was. And it hasn't been a DFL party in a long time.
And how did that happen? Because these folks, these Minnesota citizens, this is my opinion, but I think my opinion's well informed. They saw a collaboration between the traditional DFL and the traditional Min GOP that they rejected, that they wanted more of a hardcore leftist politic, and they organized. And they organized at the BPOU level, and they organized at the county level, and they got control of that party, at least here in the Twin Cities, particularly in Minneapolis. They're controlling the game now.
The DSA, you mean? And
Yes.
Absolutely. But going back to Reagan's fight against the communists, wasn't it in 63, somewhere around there, where they was read into the official records of the steps that the communists had to take in order to take down a country? And one of them was, or for the United States, was to get control of the political parties, one or both. It happened. It happened by a large margin with the Democrats in the state of Minnesota. They took that DFL party and they changed it into the DSA. It is not the DFL.
Statewide or just in the cities, would you say?
I would say that the Democrats out in our area are probably the old DFL for the most part. but they do not realize that the statewide party is DSA.
So they need some jarring event
They
to
need,
wake them up. Is that reasonable to say?
well, everybody's a little bit different. What would it take for some of those people to realize that their party doesn't represent them? What would it take me as a Republican? Let's just flip the scenario to say my party doesn't represent me. It would take something pretty significant.
I'll tell you what it did for me. Can I give you one little story?
Sure.
Paul Gazelka. I'm on X. I'm very active on X.
Sure.
I've been blocked by 3 people: Pat Garofalo, Paul Gazelka, and a guy that works for the establishment in New York writing books. The guy that wrote the books, I just pointed out some of his BS and he just blocked me. It wasn't personal. He had a big following. But, I was at a meeting. Was the eye-opener for me. I got invited to a meeting when I was first in the party, it was a digital meeting. It was a Zoom call. And Paul Gazelka was the featured politician. And let's say it was at 5:00. Now, I own a business like you do. Time is money. You got a lot of people, so when you take time off for politics, you're taking time off from running your business. Is that a true statement?
Absolutely.
So I was there, and I don't think it was 5. I think it was like 3. So I took and was on the Zoom call. This was during COVID. And Gazelka was late, really late. So we're all sitting around waiting for him. Okay, he's an important guy. Sometimes people are late. It's cool. His opening bid when he walked to the microphone was, "Sorry I'm late. I was out golfing with the Chamber of Commerce."
Hmm.
That was the opening bid. Okay, now he's not stupid. He knows that I'm there. He knows there's people like me on that call. So if he wanted to hide, he would say, "Geez, I'm sorry, I was in traffic." But when you start out, "I was out golfing with the chamber," it takes all the people that are, shall we say, a little bit grittier Republicans and gets their hair up on the back of their neck. And then we got into this conversation because they were talking about the budget, the money that had come into the state vis-a-vis Nancy Pelosi and the Save America, or whatever they called it, all this billions that poured into the state. And it was a battle over that money.
Mm.
And I said, Paul, why don't you give the money back to the citizens of Minnesota? You'll be a governor. You call it the Gazelka give back. Like you had, if you're tired of the Bologna, vote for a Wiener.
Mhm.
I said, call it the Gazelka give back. I thought it was a brilliant idea on the fly. Like your speech, you don't know what's going to come out. He said, "No, we can't do that." I go, "Why is that?" He goes, "Well," and there's other people talking. It wasn't just me. He goes, "Well, because it involves, healthcare money and COVID money, and it has to be really." I said, "Just make health savings accounts for the people. Find a way to do it. There's a workaround." And of course, what they did is they gave Waltz $500 million and kept the rest for later. Remember that story?
So that was before my time. I don't know all those details.
Well,
but
neither do I, but I'll tell you what happened. That trifecta was related to that $500 million because we don't really understand as Republicans how that money flows through the system and how it's used to elect Democrats. And I was so pissed that they had this chance to stop this. And of course, all the budget woes that you're dealing with the state right now, which, there was some movement back towards the center of the road, but not all the way.
Mhm.
It all came because the state got flooded with money, and they did it on purpose. They did it on purpose. This is how smart these people are. I mean, this was the wake-up moment for me. I don't think I'm the smartest guy in the room, but I know I'm not the dumbest guy in the room. But some of these people are so much more experienced. Like you say, you got to live it. You can't read it out of a book. The idea that you're going to make the country socialist by flooding all the states with money is a little bit counterintuitive. But they swelled all those state budgets,
Mhm.
and they don't want to give any of that money back. In your last session, you had to fight tooth and nail to move it back as far as you did. And I should ask you, how do you feel about how that outcome was?
I'm trying to think about how I want to say this. Um, so when I started as a rep, our budget in the state of Minnesota was I think right around $50 billion. Okay. It's now 67. If we say this last session, we trimmed the budget $3 billion, $3.5 billion, whatever. But it's been increased by $17 billion over 2 budget cycles. That is not a victory. That is not a victory by any means to me. And if you understand how we got that $3 billion trimmed, the Democrats under the trifecta put in automatic inflation adjusters. So every budget, every department budget is going to see an automatic increase. Now, I think Health and Human Services was already tied to automatic inflation. And I can't remember if education was the other one, but some of our budget was already tied to that. So what they did is basically said, we're not going to apply that to all of the rest of the budget since we just passed this, and that will trim about $2.5 billion, almost $3 billion off the budget. That's what they did. It's creative accounting. We didn't really shave $4 billion off of this budget.
Say that one more time. I'd like to just slow down because, you know,
I wish we had a whiteboard.
I heard what you said, but I want everybody to hear it because we're talking about creative accounting, which means what? The automatic inflation adjusters.
The automatic inflation adjusters were put in under the trifecta, which means every budget would automatically go up in future budget.
Without any vote.
Without any vote. Exactly. So the budget was set at, I think it was 50 or 52, went up to under the trifecta.
67.
Actually, it was meant to be at 70, right around 70. Okay. So this last cycle, what they said is we've shaved $3 billion off of the budget. No, they didn't. What they basically did was said we're not going to add those automatic inflation adjusters to the new departments that were just added under the trifecta, which took the $3 billion off. We didn't really cut any of our budget.
You just didn't spend the money in the future.
We just didn't spend it in the future. Exactly.
Okay, so
point being, we still increased the state budget by $17 billion over the last 2 budget cycles.
Which is how many years for those that? Four years.
4 years. Every budget cycle is 2 years. We just set the next one, so that's 4 years total. We've gone from 50 to 67 billion, which is.
Hey, take a percentage on that, Tanner, because I don't want to guess. What's 17 on 50? I'm just curious.
Let's do some other numbers here.
Keep going. Please preach.
So for every $1 billion you spend in the state of Minnesota, every $1 billion that the state spends, divide that out by the 5.6 million people in the state, it comes up to be just under $200. Okay? So for every $1 billion of new spending, every man, woman, and child in the state of Minnesota has to pay in another $200. Okay?
But not all of them can pay.
So if we take the $17 billion of increased spending over the last 2 budget cycles.
That's 17 times 2.
17 times 2 is
$3,400.
$3,400 per man, woman, and child in the state of Minnesota.
But not the children can't pay.
That's exactly right.
And a lot of the men and women can't pay.
Take out under 18 years old. They don't pay as much in taxes. They're a portion of the they just don't. They don't work.
You're just making this simple about what the effect of this is on the individual citizen.
That's right. Take off the 65 and older. The majority of them do not make as much. If you're on Social Security, if you're on fixed income, they are not paying as much taxes in either. When you look at this, per every man, woman, and child is $3,400 in the last 2 budget cycles, but you shave off the 18 and under, you shave off the 65 and older, and you're probably close to $6,000 every working person in the state of Minnesota.
And you know what? Paul Gazelka blocked me on X because I told him, you could have given this money back to the citizens and taken it away from the government, and they could have never expanded these budgets because the money wouldn't have been there. It would have gone back into the pockets of the people, and you could have been a Republican governor with a pansy-ass name like Gazelka. So it's like a Huckabee, but you could have done it. Could the Gazelka get, and you didn't do it, and you blocked me, and you're a coward because I didn't ride you very hard. I got people coming on X telling me they're going to kill me.
Hmm.
You know, I don't block them. They say all kinds of anti-Semitic, all kinds of awful things come. I don't block anybody. You want to know why? Because this is politics, and it takes some gumption to do it. So when I actually kind of fairly respectful of everybody, because that's just my natural religious background. I'm not calling people names and stuff. I'm just saying, hey, this is the facts. Explain this to me. And that's why I'm pissed at this guy. Because if that money would have been removed from the coffers that Nancy Pelosi stuck that money in here to do exactly what happened, was to expand this state budget. And that was after COVID had kind of receded. And that's what led to the inflation, was that particular federal bill. They flooded this state with money. The budget expanded by $17 billion. The Republicans could have demanded that money went back. And that is my with the Uni Party.
It very well could have. Under the trifecta, you did not have the opportunity to give the money back. They spent it. That was the $19 billion surplus.
This is before. This
Right.
is when Gazelka was the leader.
So as long as I've been in there, it's pretty tough to do that. But going back to what I was talking about there with the numbers,
Yes.
most of the people in politics or around politics don't put it into perspective for the average person. How does a $17 billion surplus, a $17 billion increase in government affect me? Most people can't tell you. They don't know. They don't think about it. But once you put it into, how does it affect you? If it's going to cost you $6,000 every budget cycle, don't you think you as a taxpayer could figure out better ways to spend $6,000 than the government can?
Well, apparently the way the government's been run, which is another problem I got with it, we got $1 billion of fraud. You're a businessman. I'm a businessman. You're there. You said you're, as a legislator from 5B,
Mhm.
your scope, somebody told you this because this is something you learned. Your votes are about the entire state. They're about you protecting your district, representing your district, but you have to think about it on a statewide basis. Did I understand that correctly?
Yes, you do.
Okay, great. So I got something to say here to all the Republican legislators, and if I get pissed, I'll start naming names. Everybody's talking about fraud now. I'm a businessman. Did you read the bill? Because when you give people a license to, why do you lock doors? You don't lock doors to keep criminals out. That doesn't keep criminals out. You lock a door to keep honest people from stealing. So when you pass legislation that is an open door to fraud, and you vote for it, or even if you don't vote for it, let's say you opposed it, that's not good enough. Now everybody's standing up going fraud, fraud, fraud. Where were the people 4, 5, 6, 8 years ago when these programs were being put in place and saying, hey, all these people have to do is watch a video and they can build Medicaid? That's crazy. Where were they then? I'm asking, this is a question I'm asking. Because if I'm missing something, I don't want to indict people in my mind for being crass political animals. Maybe they didn't understand it. Maybe it was opaque. Maybe they don't read the bills. How can you I understand not having the votes. You can say, hey, we lost. But let me tell you what we just passed, so that you laid a marker down in the public record that this sets up a predicate for massive fraud, because that's what happened. And we didn't have the vote. And I'm sure if I go back and look at these votes, plenty of Republicans voted for these bills.
I'm sure.
And so I'm asking you, where did this go? Why don't the people talk? If they're there to protect, if they're the sheepdogs, and they're there to protect me from the wolf, I'm the sheep, right? I'm the mud people. Why didn't they come out right when the legislation passed and said this is wholly inadequate to protect the public purse? I really want to know an answer to that, because I don't get it.
So why aren't we still doing that is the better question. So one of the things that was passed is paid family medical leave. How many people have heard about this and actually think this is a good idea?
I'm a
Probably a lot.
business owner.
80% of businesses already offer some sort of
I
paid
already
family
do.
medical leave. Exactly. But you know what's going to happen with that program? First of all, they set the numbers that it was 0.8% was going to come out of your paycheck to pay for this thing. And then it's been bumped up 3 times now, 2 or 3 times. It was capped this year at 1.1%, something like that. The system will not run on its own. What you're going to see on that paid family medical leave is people who are going to fraud that system. It is going to be so filled.
You're putting down a marker right now
Absolutely.
here on the Professor Penn podcast.
Absolutely.
Thursday night. What's the date on Thursday?
The 14th.
14th of August, 2025. Mike Wiener has said that the paid family leave program is an open door to fraud. Did I get that correctly?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I can't change what happened before, but this system within the next couple of years, people are going to say, well, we can't keep it going because there's way more money going out that's coming in. It must be successful. No, it's not successful. How can you verify, especially with some of these small businesses or with the fraud that we're seeing already in this state, that people are actually have the medical conditions and so forth that they say they are? We don't.
We don't have the mechanism
We
to
don't
do
have
it.
the mechanisms in place to do this. This is going to be feeding more fraud in our state. And who is going to be paying for it?
The taxpayers.
Exactly. So there was a professor that came out and said that that paid family medical leave is going to be about a 16% income tax. He called it an income tax. So we know in the state of Minnesota, we actually know across the nation, you talked about industrious people. We know that there's millions, hundreds of millions of hours of vacation that are never used by the average person every year. That's just the way we are. We're very hard workers in the country. You're going to be subsidizing somebody else's fraud with that paid family medical leave. Absolutely. So you talk about why it wasn't done before. I couldn't give you all the specifics, but I can tell you right now, this is going to be filled with fraud. This is going to be a system down the road where people are going to say, how come nobody sounded the alarm?
You just sounded it.
I just sounded it.
Great. I think that is sensational. And that's what I want from my Republican Party representatives. You know, we don't win every match,
No.
but it doesn't still your voice to call out the truth as you see it. And that is my problem with Kristen Robbins. Sorry, Kirsten, whatever your first name is. I'm sorry if I'm getting it wrong. I will say this. She was honest enough at the SD40, at the CD3 convention to admit that she supported Nikki Haley. I appreciated that honesty, you know, but I don't appreciate making a career out of banging the pots and pans after the cow already ran out of the pasture. She could have been Jim Nash, all these people, didn't they? Because you know now, you weren't there then. And see, what I want is my party, we don't have to, we have a fight in the party. That's just the way it is. And we may lose for a while until we sort this out. And that's politics, and that's okay. The Republicans aren't going to go away in your district.
No.
Some of them are what we would call American nationalists, and some of them are more traditional Republicans. It's okay. I don't dislike any of the traditional Republicans, personally. They're all good people. Not all of them, but generally speaking, I get along with everybody personally. But I don't want to go along to get along. I want the party to stand up and recognize that there are problems in our state, like the University of Minnesota. Well, there's a little bit of about these regions. No, get into the university and look at the fraud that's going on out there. Billions of dollars going down rat holes, and nobody's looking at it. And, you know, Representative Rarick, which I give her kudos for, stood up and said over a couple thousand people at the university make more than the governor. What's next, Representative Rarick?
What's next?
What's next? I mean, don't just, because if there's nothing next, it's just politics.
Well, let's look at that higher ed bill. Let's look at the universities. It is important for our country, for our society, to have higher education. I mean, this goes back through the church teaching. I mean, the university system was set up basically by the Catholic Church. It is effective to educating people, and it's highly important that we do it.
Did you ever think about being a priest?
No.
Okay, I'm just asking. It was just an idea. Go ahead. So yes, the Catholic Church was very important in setting up all over the globe
Absolutely.
the system. But go ahead with this bill.
So the education, it has turned from what is how do I put it? The education was supposed to be something that would improve a society. It was supposed to make it better. But what we've seen is ideologies that are coming in are the main focus of the higher education systems. It's not supposed to be this way. I don't feel.
And Trump is attacking it like a fury. I mean,
Exactly.
Columbia, Harvard, he's after these schools. He's trying to change that.
So we have there's a couple issues with the higher education system. First of all, are your degrees worth what they were in the past? I mean, when you went to a Ivy League school, it had clout, it had value. Now, I've asked people and said, what value does that certificate hold nowadays? And I've literally had people that have said, and I believe this is the common thought process out there. It is not so much about the education; it's about the connections. Hold on here. Isn't that system of it higher ed supposed to be about education?
Well, that's
Isn't it?
my father taught at the university for over 50 years, and I grew up in the university system. And it changed from the 60s into the 90s tremendously. And I will say, in terms of the state of Minnesota, and this is something we just have to be honest about. We're not honest about it because, of course, our kids are being educated there, and it's the University of Minnesota, it's the Gophers, and we got all these positive feelings about it. But what really went on out there, because I was in the room, let me tell you a story. I was in the room in 1969. Uh, Eugene McCarthy, who was a Minnesota senator,
Hmm.
was a super dove anti-war senator, lost the Democratic endorsement to run for president on the D side to another son of Minnesota, Hubert Humphrey, who was what we would call the Uni Party. Now he was a supporter of the Vietnam War, and McCarthy was not, and the party, endorsed Humphrey. And, my mother was working in the McCarthy campaign, and my father was a leader of the anti-war movement out at the university. And they sat down and they said, man, we cannot change this system this way. It's not going to work. We got another idea. Let's take the university from a conservative institution that preserves traditional values, and let's turn it to the left. And how are we going to do that? We're going to work on the tenure system. And
Hmm.
we're going to make sure that the people that get tenure at the university have a certain ideology. It's not really going to be so much about the search for truth. It's going to be about, well, there's this military, and these people were against the military industrial complex, no different than certain parts of the MAGA movement. We got to take down this governmental group, and we're going to do it because the university is a huge land grant research institution. We're going to get control of this institution. And of course, now those people that did that in the 60s, they're more like your neighbors that were DFLers. But they spawned a cascade of further and further and left academics. And now those people wouldn't even recognize the folks back in the 60s. And what we now have is a finishing school for leftism that right down to your kindergarten teacher, you got a leftist. And we're not dealing with that. And we don't have to win. And this, let me finish, let's give the floor back to you. We don't have to win political control to start talking about the truth. And why don't we do it? We're afraid of losing. We'd rather win than tell the truth. Do you agree with that statement?
I think it was Marcus Aurelius said, "I would rather lose with integrity than win by deception." So I think we have to call some of this stuff out. Now, I use a certain amount of discretion about some of these things. Sometimes I will admit that I look at it and I go, I need to do more research before I weigh in on something. But when you look at the higher education system at the colleges, you're exactly right. We talked before about how Reagan had looked at communism and the threats that were coming in. Taking over higher education was one of them. That was critical to what they were doing because Stalin said, "Give me 3 years of educating your kids, and I will plant seeds that will never be uprooted." This is how you change a country from the inside. We have turned a socialist communist through the education system. And we're feeding that system as legislators with money,
Billions.
billions of dollars. I want higher education. I want that search for truth. The science, the medical part that's there is absolutely huge. We need that. But in its current form, the way it's going, and our taxpayers that are paying for this, it's not sustainable. What are we producing? Are you producing a piece of paper there that has value? I don't think so, because they've gone so far left. Aristotle talks about the golden, the middle, right? Stay away from the extremes. I would say that the extremes in higher education have gone so far left that we have to get back to the center. We have to get back to an education that when you look at that paper, it's not just about connecting with other people who have the same piece of paper. It means you have spent the time, you are talented, and that paper says that that education has value. Right now, I don't know that it does. And I don't know that we should be taking taxpayer money to the extent that we are to pay for a system to give people a piece of paper that doesn't have the same value that it used to.
Well, it has a value, but it's not the same value. I just want to make a distinction. It's not that it doesn't have a value. It's a different value than what it had traditionally. What it did traditionally, it meant I have mastered a subject or the ability to learn. I've shown up on time. I've performed these tasks, and you can rely on me. If you're a business owner, I can hire you knowing that we have a common understanding of how the world is going to work. I don't know how you do this in your business, but in my business, when I hire people show up with college degrees, I don't even interview them anymore. I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to deal with that deprogramming that I have to do to just make money because they got a different agenda. And I'm just talking as a business owner now. I mean, I'm saying the people in the street for the tire business, the people that are uneducated, are easier for me to work into my business and make them productive in my business than it is to take someone that graduated from Columbia University.
When I look at hiring nowadays, granted, most of the people that fall into that age bracket are going to move slower. They're going to be have health issues. I would rather take somebody that's older, that has lived a little bit of life, that is going to be a little bit slower. I don't have to tell them how to work. I will take somebody a little bit older, even if 50s, 60s, whatever it is, they know how to work. They have experience in life and they're going to say, well, maybe we should do it this way. And I'm going to listen to them. You take a young person, and not all of them, and we can't generalize to everything.
You can't broad brush the whole crew.
Right. But there's young people who have had an education that are experts on stuff, but no real world experience. And will come out and say, well, this is the way it should be done. Okay, try to apply that in the real world. Doesn't always work. It's amazing to me that, well, let's back up. I think we have to go back to those principles. What works? Where does knowledge, where does truth come from? When we look at the ideologies that are being promoted in higher education, it's not working. So let's change that system. And instead of funding that, let's say, okay, until you put X, Y, and Z in place, then we're not going to. I mean, we as legislators, especially in the House, what is our job? Is to control the purse strings. If we don't like the way the higher education system is leaning, then isn't it our responsibility to hold back some of that money? Or to say, until this changes, you don't get this money?
Or even offer more if you make these changes.
Sure.
Because, one of the things that I noticed my father when he was teaching in the 60s, he used to shovel tar for the city of St. Paul to feed me. But by the time we got to the 90s, it was a damn good job. You know, not a lot of work. If you didn't want to work, you didn't have to work that hard.
Sure.
Lots of pay, sabbaticals, 3 months off. You're a state employee, state pension, state medical. It's a really great job.
Hmm.
But it's, back in the day, the people that taught because there was no money in it, you had to really love the idea of teaching. But when the government got so involved in higher education and it became a gravy train, all of a sudden, we got people in there that didn't love teaching so much.
Hmm. I think the way Trump is going after the colleges shows how well he understands that system and how it has not been working for America for quite some time.
I think your comment there is beautiful, and I've said this on the podcast just recently. Uh, we experiment as human beings. Like I talked about, like Tanner's got a young daughter, and she's crawling around, she's putting everything in her mouth, she's
Mhm.
experimenting, and we are not that much more sophisticated than that little kid crawling around. And we try this and we try that. People said, "Geez, we tried this religion thing for 2,000 years. It doesn't seem to be working. Let's try something else." Okay, but we didn't need 2,000 years to find out it's not really working. And what you're saying is, yeah, I'm open to other ideas, but let's look at the results. And the results don't seem to be making a better life for the people. And what I'm really buoyed by that you're not running away from this, because I had some of your colleagues on there. You start talking about teachers, oh, they run for the hills because there's a teachers union. Okay, hey, okay, great. As you just said, what was that quote you just said about it's better to, you were, it was some philosopher's quote about winning or searching for truth.
Oh, it's better to lose with integrity than win by fraud or by
I want
lies.
that to be the Republican Party of Minnesota. I'd rather lose with integrity. And they don't understand when I say this because they're all about winning. As you just said, that feeling is addicting. But I would rather lose with integrity searching for truth than win through deception.
So, and I think my point with this is we can win. We don't have to lose with integrity. I think we win with integrity.
Well, okay.
So
By
let's
telling the truth.
by telling the truth.
Okay.
We can also win by promoting our ideas and what works better. Why do we run away from an issue like the teachers? I've got many friends. I have many friends who are teachers in our local school districts. Talk to them all the time. I am for education. I'm for many different types of education. If we know that every student is different, every child is different. I have 9. My wife and I have 9 kids, and every single one of them is different. When it comes to their education, how can we say that only one style of education works? And really, let's step back and take a look at the education system that's been put in place for the last roughly 100 years. It was put in place. It's the Prussian, military model to train soldiers, to get them accustomed to lining up bells. And it worked very well when it was applied in the United States by people who promoted the Industrial Revolution. It took people off the farms, put them in rows, got them to live by a series of times. The bell rings, you do this, the bell rings, you do that. Uh, uh, who, which one was it? Rockefeller had said, I don't want a nation of thinkers, I want a nation of workers. They used that model in order to train workers for the Industrial Revolution. We know kids are different. We have got experience. We've got more knowledge now than more access to knowledge. Shouldn't say we always apply it. We don't always have the knowledge. We have more access to knowledge now than we've ever had before. I can look at my 9 kids and say every one of them is different, and we've tried different things for their schooling. We've tried public education. We've tried parochial education. We've tried um, uh, trying to think what we tried with one of them. Boarding. That's the word I was thinking. We've tried many different things. Right now, the youngest 4 are homeschooled. And every one of them is different. And some of them thrive under one style of education, and the next one might not. So why do we say that in public education, the only way to do this is to put them in a public school? Why do we say that education or this style of education is the only way that this will work? When we know every kid is different, every demographic is different. Every one of those small railroad towns in my area is different. And yet we say the education has only got one model. Why? Why do we do that?
Why do we do that?
Well, like I said before, it was set up to train workers for the Industrial Revolution. And when you feed this system and say, this is the only thing that works and it has a monopoly in the state of Minnesota. But don't you think the majority of those teachers want what's best for the kids?
I don't know. I would hope so.
I think a lot of them do. I think the majority of them do.
So then
Especially
they
public school, because I'll say public school fund, or how much teachers are paid. One of my favorite teachers, he was completely honest with me how much he got paid, and he was still only making 60K, and he had been with the school district for almost 20 years.
Yep.
So,
There are,
those level of teachers, they're definitely in because of the passion. They do care.
I believe that.
Yeah.
And I support those teachers. Now, I can think of one specifically in my own education because I went to public school for a while. I saw education through 3 different forms: private, parochial school to begin with, went to public for a while, homeschooled for a year, and then back to public. So I saw the differences and I saw what works and what didn't. And I think about it later, and it's amazing to me. My parents gave me that opportunity to figure out what made me. And it wasn't necessarily that they looked at each one of us different. It was opportunities that arose at that time. Um, but I look at the public education system that I had, and I had some great teachers. I really did. I think some of them were absolutely amazing. And then there were some that I said, "What are you doing teaching here?" I can remember one of the teachers that said, "If you're going to fall asleep in my class, put your head on the desk so you don't get whiplash." And this was a subject that I really enjoyed. I loved history. When the teacher said that, I said, "I'm switching classes because I'm probably not going to learn. If you're not going to keep us excited about education, then I'm not going to learn anything in this class." I switched classes.
what we're talking about here at the end of the podcast is probably the most important element of what we do as a society, which is educate our children.
It's
And what
huge.
we're saying that we're agreeing that the education has become an indoctrination system, that the value of that degree that comes out the other end is different than what it was when we were younger, and that the legislature has the power at least to start calling it out. If it doesn't have the votes to change the budget, the people, and you're calling it out. And there's a lot of bravery in that. I mean, because I've had a lot of other people on here and I've tried to lead the conversation in this direction. And I've been rebuffed. I know Tana remembers me getting rebuffed where people go, "We're not going there." And I think we need to go there. We need to go into the places we're most afraid to go politically.
So when it comes to school choice or voucher systems, it's amazing. Even the studies themselves, inner city polls very high that they want a voucher system. Why? They're not happy with the public education that they have right now. They want something else for their kids.
Well,
So
this can be the uniting issue between the core city and the outstate. We need to find. I mean, I'm going to have you come back because I'm into changing the whole state culturally. That's my thing. And I'm looking at and I can learn it from you. In fact, I'm not going to wait for you to come back on air. We're going out for a meal because I want to try to find those issues that would be common issues of broad, even bipartisan agreement between the people that are living in what you would call God's country,
God's
so to
country.
speak, and the people that are living right in the heart of Minneapolis, where I'm spending a lot of my effort trying to work, to unite these. It's like I live in CD3. As far as I'm concerned, CD3 can go bite a hog in the ass. They're in the way of the whole deal. They're like a dividing barrier. I'm talking about the Republicans in CD3. No, I want to see this rural group from the outstate and this urban core group find commonality. Now we have that winning constituency to win in the state. I mean, that's, and I'm not saying I'm right. This is a political idea I'm trying to work on. And because we got to wrap up, it's getting late. I want to give you an invitation. I'm working on a plan with Robert. On October 5th, mark your calendar. We want to roll in up there, and I'd like to have 1,000 people show up where you could be a keynote speaker, and let's get everybody involved in 5. And we're rolling in up there for a campaign event, and I want to see as many people up there come together as we can. Could we work towards because we want to bring up people from the cities. We want to get a group going that's significant.
I think in order to promote the ideas, I'll go just about anywhere and talk to people. If that means coming down to the metro, which I've done quite a bit over the last year, because I understand that to win this state back,
We need that city.
we need the metro. And
And-
our ideas work, whether it's greater Minnesota or within that beltway. Like I said before, human nature doesn't change. Parents want what's best for the kids. And the vouchers, school choice, I mean, those things make sense to parents. They want that opportunity. They want something better for themselves, or for their kids, rather. We can offer that. By shying away from that subject, we're just walking away from the battlefield. And we're saying that that system is the only thing that works. That's not true.
That's why I'm speaking ill of CD3, because in CD3 where I'm involved, it's all about how can we blend in with the system? How can we make this system work? And that's not what you want in the outstate, and that's not what they want in the city.
But I think in politics, in just about everything we do in life, a battle is fought on many fronts. My way of thinking may not work for some people. It may be aggressive. It may be confrontational. They may not just like me because of my hair color. I don't know. But point being, it's going to take different points of view. And if I come down to the metro and I talk to a rep down here at one of his social gatherings, I've got to make sure that I'm not saying something offensive, I guess, because that's not best for either one of us. I don't like to be offensive the way it is. I don't like coarse language. I don't. I mean, that was instilled in us very early on. Like I said before, Dad had a construction company. I never heard him use a cuss word until I was 18 years old. And it rocked me when I heard him say it. I'd never heard him say anything like that. You can imagine the language around a construction site sometimes. You didn't do it when he was there. We can do better. Our education can do better. Our high schools can do better. When we've seen our numbers plummeting from, what were we, 5, 6, something like that in the country, we're down to like 17th under the Democrat control in this state. When we see our higher education losing out to other countries as well, we can do better. We need to improve. And every one of us, and I think this is, I know we got to wrap up, but human nature, we become complacent. And we say, this is good enough. And we do this for a while. And it's this ebb and flow in a society. We're at the point now where we're kind of at the bottom of that trough.
Of that cycle.
Exactly. And we want something better. And we're looking and saying, where is this going to come from? Where are the ideas going to come from? How are we going to do better? People want better. I don't like name calling, things like that. I think I can do better. And I think that resonates with people. I don't like higher taxes because I like the freedoms that come with me making the decisions for myself and my family. If government takes that decision away from me, I have a problem with that. I want to empower people to say, you can do better in your state. You can do better with your representatives, your senators, your governor. But we're not going to do that with the status quo. We're not going to do that with the same thing that we've done for the last, 40 years. We are at this cycle right now. And I've almost compared it to being like an addict. An addict, life is pretty good when you're doing your drugs and things get, you're enjoying things, right? And then all of a sudden, something happens, health issues, mental issues, you get busted, whatever it is, and you hit rock bottom. The only place to look is up. Our society has gotten to a point where we're saying, we need to start looking up. We need some new ideas. We need some different thought processes here. Does that rattle the cage a little bit? Yeah. But I think if we do it smart, if we are non-confrontational, if we can explain to the voters why our ideas are better, I think it's going to resonate.
Well, I think what you're saying is that we have to be honest with people.
Yeah.
We're lacking in fundamental honesty across the entire political spectrum of the status quo because they're clinging to power. They know that there's a growing groundswell of public dissatisfaction with what is being generated politically.
A good example to that was I had a floor speech about omnibus bills with the health bill. And I don't know if you got a chance to see that or watch. It wasn't very long. I had a lot of pushback on that. And basically what I said was, first of all, omnibus bills are horrible. And that you're putting these people in a terrible spot because they're voting in favor of one thing, but then they're also against something else. Some of them that they might find morally repugnant. This omnibus bills, this conglomeration of all this legislation is not the way this was supposed to be done. Our Constitution in the state of Minnesota says single line item bills. But when you talk to politicians, they say, well, we don't do business that way. Why not? So we need to educate the voters as well and say, how does your rep or senator or governor feel about omnibus bills? How do they feel about these issues? And if they can't give you a good answer, then maybe it's time to get a different one.
On that note, let me just say back, omnibus bills, you're a critic thereof. They're not constitutional. And it's time to start asking our representatives, how do you feel about these bills where we have to vote, the elected representatives have to vote for things that maybe there's other things in the bill that they're deeply opposed to? What kind of scam is that? And that's not an accident. You know that. I know that. And you're saying that's the way business is done. And you're saying, hey, why don't we ask people, do you think this is right? And they have to give you yes or no answer. Because when they start hemming and hawing, yeah, I think it's okay. No, what you want to hear is, no, this is not right. We need to be constitutional. We need to be clear. And we need not be packing these bills with a bunch of hidden backdoor programs.
Mm-hmm.
Do I understand correctly?
You're absolutely right. And the people out there need to understand what they are so that they can start asking the questions. Once the population... Education.
Republican Party is an educational organization.
Exactly.
All right, great. It's great to talk with you. I thought it was a wide-ranging and very thought-provoking conversation. I had a great time.
We covered a lot of bases.
Oh, I think it was great. Tanner?
Yeah.
Thank you very much for coming in this morning. Mr. Mike Wiener, you're welcome back here anytime you want to come in. It's very nice to get to know you. I want to thank you very much for your time and for your insight and for really a very elevated conversation. I really appreciated it.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much. Good to meet you, sir. Tanner, thanks very much.
Of course. Have a good night, everybody.